This is a Q&A session for our Graduate Student Research Grant Program. We have two call for proposals that are out right now, the Graduate Student Research Grant and the Partnership Grant. We have an alternating Tuesdays and Wednesdays. So just like to make sure that if everybody knows, this one is the Graduate Student one. We'll have another Partnership Grant one this time next week. And we are super excited for you to be here. We're super excited to talk about the grant program and answer your questions. We have Emma Marks from staff and Heather Ullman, who are both here to answer questions and support. Heather is the administrator for the research and education program. And we are going to start today with I'm going to throw a poll up for everybody, and I'm going to start a little screen share here, a presentation from our grant administrator, who is currently Caitlin Cerna, and who is currently out at an event. Oh, thank you for dropping into the chat there, Heather.
Thank you so much for sharing your lunchtime with us and digging in to the Northeast SARE Graduate Student Research Grant. My name is Caitlin Cerna, and I am the grant administrator for this grant, as well as our research for novel approaches. And today we're focusing on graduate student, and the goal of today is that you'll walk away with a clearer understanding of eligibility and just guidance on how to submit a successful proposal. And so this chart is also really helpful if you are thinking about if the graduate student's the best fit for you. Typically, graduate students themselves make most sense to go into the graduate student grant program, but it's also a good way to see where perhaps the research that you're doing as a graduate student could be sort of a launching pad for other grant programs that we have as well. And a little bit about Northeast SARE is that we are one of 4 regional SAREs across the United States. And so Northeast SARE serves West Virginia, Pennsylvania, and Maryland, all the way up north to Maine, including Washington, D.C. And to apply to the graduate program, the most important criteria is that you have to be a graduate student. So you need to be a graduate student enrolled at an accredited institution in the Northeast region. And your proposals should be addressing current or potential issues of importance to farms in this region and take place in this region, so that Northeast region. And all of our programs, including funding decisions, is guided by our outcome statement, which is our vision for Northeast agriculture and how we see the need for our food system to work. And we're going to come back to the outcome statement a little bit more on some other grant tips, but this is a really good kind of like foundation or even just guiding star as you are conceptualizing your project or begin writing a grant proposal. And grant proposals should address at least one of the themes in sustainable agriculture. So some of these are highlighted within our outcome statement, but just to highlight these as other areas of importance, environmental quality, health and farming community, quality of life, quality of work, quality of products produced, efficiency on farms, reduction of costs. All of these sorts of things that you can kind of see poke around in our outcome statement are really good themes that you need to address one of the themes. And so there's a couple examples here, but you can kind of dissect our outcome statement however you want to as you're conceptualizing things. And our grant awards are a maximum of $15,000. So projects can run up to 2 years. And typically about 35 to 45% of proposals are funded. So the thing to keep in mind here is that you're competing with applicants across 12 states and DC. And just to note for 2024 applicants, it's a bit of a different year because we took a bit of a pause last year. So we paused to focus on some of our diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice, or DEIJ work, so that we can be thinking about things like making our application process smoother and making sure that our process is accessible and equitable. And so in that process, we paused this program and we didn't offer it last year. So it's a little bit unknown if the number of applicants are going to be a lot more increased this year because of that gap in the year. And it might be a more competitive year, but fear not. I do think it's still worth your while to apply here. And as I alluded to, is that the graduate student grant is one of our small grants, and it can lay a really good foundation for future research projects, either with other larger projects and larger fund grants at SARE, or another program or grant program. And we recognize that this doesn't typically cover the full expense of the project. So the $15,000 goes pretty quickly. It typically isn't the full project that is, scoped out in the proposal. And so it's okay if you, are seeking out additional funds to support it. It's also okay if you are scaling back a larger concept to make it fit into the parameters of 2 years and $15,000. And the goal of the program is to really drive a new generation of scientists. Our intent is to encourage and support graduate students by introducing them to grant writing. And we really want to just get folks beyond their immediate coursework at institutions and, whatever college or school that you're with, and get in the field and talking to farmers and build those relationships. And so, getting a little bit out of the lab or mixing the lab with field work and talking with farmers, or also, cross-disciplinary work is also really exciting areas as well. And we anticipate that many graduate students are applying for this grant for their very first time. And so, or their very first time, or that you've never even written a grant at all, and that's totally okay. We're here at SARE, we really view this grant as a fundamental learning opportunity. So we know that this may be your first grant ever, or your first time applying to the graduate student grant, and try to provide lots of resources like today's Q&A and other resources available on our website, as well as really accessible grant administrators like myself, who are available to answer questions and support you along the way. And then just, our commitment to education is kind of seen throughout this grant process. And so we want to make sure that our main objective of your grant proposal is to have research that can be applied to this region's land, water, and agriculture. The most common question that we get, or I've been getting so far, is somebody emailing or calling about whether their project concept is eligible as a topic. And unfortunately, well, I would say fortunately, it's not very black and white. We have a list of topics that are included in the call for proposals on page 2. But that's not an exhaustive list at all. Ultimately, an eligible topic is something that supports that outcome statement. And the main thing that you need to be thinking about is that your goal as a grant writer is to address one of those themes in our outcome statement and convince the grant reviewer that your proposal will have impact on the region. And looking for in the call for a proposal, if you head more towards the back, if you review the criteria at the end of the call for proposal, that's a really good way to get in the mindset of what are grant reviewers even looking for, and how will this be weighted or scored against my proposal? Another tip is that you might consider exploring the National SARE database. So all of our previously funded work is on a public domain, and it fully lists all previously funded projects at every region, so not even just Northeast SARE. And so you can see what's been funded to get a better glimpse of is this something that really excites grant reviewers? Has this been funded, multiple times over the past couple of years? And those, kind of thought processes can really swing either way. Even if something or a topic has been funded already, It might just help you understand that your proposal might want to like niche down or like really focus on a gap that you saw in that work, or just really get a better sense of like, this has never been funded. This is like a very innovative thing that is not talked about. And so you want to make sure that you're highlighting those things so that you can showcase to the grant reviewer that your project is relatable, is on par and on topic with our outcomes statement, and will have an impact on the region. And there is just, a frustrating process of the fact that this isn't super black and white. And we just want to say that, like, I hope it fosters ingenuity and holistic thinking on your grant conceptualization. But if you are really stumped, feel free to give me a call or shoot me an email and we can talk about your topic. But just remember that your project ideas should enhance sustainable agriculture and benefit farmers. So here we have just like broad strokes of our categories within the grant applications that you'll be asked to complete. And all grant proposals must be submitted into the grant management system, or GMS. It's an online portal at projects.sare.org. And because it's an online portal, we definitely recommend that you prepare your responses to the application, to those questions, like in advance. Like, it's not really recommended to hop onto the GMS portal and type your responses in there, just in case. So we recommend that you copy and paste them from a Notes app or a Word document, rather than working in that live application. And we have a Word document template that can serve as a guide to kind of work you through those questions. And there's also a checklist in the call for proposals. So if you cross-reference your work between the questions that you've responded to and the call for proposals, you'll be able to, just triple check that you haven't forgotten anything. Because remember that incomplete applications or submissions, missing materials are not considered and they don't advance to the next round of the grant review process. Now, the graduate student grant is a little bit different because we require a faculty advisor. Most institutions don't allow students to manage their own grant awards, so you need to have that faculty advisor that supports the project. They should be available to provide support and input to you and willing to sign off on your work. So they do need to be informed about your work, but the listed principal investigator on the contract, while it's them, you as a graduate student are expected to see the project to fruition. So from writing and submitting the proposal to meeting your objectives and reporting out on them, that is your responsibility as the graduate student grantee. And one way to see if your faculty at your institution has ever worked on a SARE grant is to search the project database as well. So that database you can search by institution name or your faculty advisor that maybe you're thinking about to see if they have ever worked with Northeast SARE or another SARE, just to know if they've have this under their belts already. But they don't have to have had previous experience. And it's pretty simple to onboard a new faculty advisor as well. For grant writing tips, it's the number one thing that we just are honing in, I've already said it a couple of times here, is that reviewers are looking for you to really describe how your project relates to the outcome statement and will impact farmers. So you need to clearly identify a problem, describe how you and your project or your research will address it, and elevate the impact your project will have on farms in the Northeast. So your methods need to be, clearly outlined in a really meaningful way that tells the reviewer what you're going to do and how you're going to do it and when. So I personally kind of think of this as like a table chart of like really thinking and categorizing things into line by line to make sure that you're thinking about the full picture and the succession and how long each thing takes to make sure that you're presenting an idea that can come to fruition in 2 years. And there's a lot of detail that goes into writing the proposals, and the information can come just overwhelming. So just when you're writing your proposal, keep your audience in mind. The reviewers that will be reviewing your grants is a mixed audience with agricultural knowledge. They don't necessarily have like expert knowledge or experts in your specific subject area. So you want to make sure that you're avoiding technical jargon and build in time to like introduce concepts before just like brushing over them in your grant proposal. You also want to make sure that you build time in your timeline of this whole grant writing process as a grant applicant to review your draft, but also to ask another person to review your draft. And ideally, it would be somebody who has no clue what you do or what you work on. Just make sure that it's like telling a cohesive story and really clear to understand. The most valuable tip I can provide, though, is to build out a timeline and work back from the due date. So the due date of the grant this year is April 16th. They are due at 5 p.m. Eastern time. And so the first step is to talk to your desired faculty advisor and work with them to confirm their ability to join as an advisor as early as possible. These folks can be hard to hunt down, and definitely think about whether the faculty advisor has capacity to support you as well, and if they're a good fit for you as well. So, build in enough time to not only think thoughtfully about the project, but to recruit collaborators, farms that you might want to work with, time to obtain letters of commitment, and building relationships so that, and if you get funded, you can kind of hit the ground running. And building a collaborative project can be sometimes like herding cats. So definitely organize your efforts and asks very clearly and early. And this is, something I'd recommend if you're planning to apply this year to get moving on making those personal connections and relationship building. And the last tip that I would provide is that I recommend building in days to step away from your grant proposal. It's really easy to gloss over in reviewing your own writing, but also something as dense like this. It's really easy to gloss over things and edit it when you've been in that document all day. So make sure that you build time to step away from the computer, stretch your legs, go for a walk, clear your head. Ideally, come back to it on a different day to edit it, just to make sure that it's, a very cohesive, clearly indicated and clearly explained project proposal, because we only have what you have on writing to review as part of the review committee. So if you do all of that and you still come back stumped, we do have a YouTube channel with more information, and we have other resources on our website. And you can always contact me at northeast-gs@sare.org. And you can always give me a call as well. But we are here to support you. So good luck. And I'm really excited to see what proposals are cooked up this year.
Hooray for Caitlin! Yay! Thank you so much remotely, Caitlin, who's off at Manners right now. With that, and thank you to everybody who's answered our faculty advisor question poll there. And with that, we're going to open it up to wider questions. I am going to be dropping another poll into the mix here in just a moment, but we just want to create some space here for anybody who has some immediate follow-up questions on the presentation or one you were carrying when you came in.
Hello. Hi. I have a question. I'm interested to know when would be the announcement for the proposal to be granted?
Great
Like
question.
How long do we need to wait for the result? Thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much for that question. So awarded proposals, all proposals decisions will be announced at the end of July and / early August, right around that time frame. And for projects that are funded, the contract start date will be August 1st.
Thank you.
Thanks for asking.
Hi, I have a question about budgets, like submitting the budget portion of the proposal. I wanted to know, I need my materials cost is low. I need them funding basically as like a way to supplement my tuition because I'll be going past like how much funding I have from the department. Is that looked down upon if most of the funding is not going, because materials cost is low? Does that matter if most of the funding is for tuition, or should I? I don't know how that works. There's a lot of different sections in the budget proposal, and I'm like, I don't have people working for me and all that. Is that normal to have like most of the funding going for just, me supporting myself for the project? Thank you.
Yes. So we at SARE and our reviewers, we recognize that $15,000 is a relatively low cap and that it's not going to fund the full costs of most projects. And so putting the expenses that you need from SARE, ensuring that they are allowable expenses, and we have a ton of guidance in our documents about allowable expenses. And then there's actually a new section in the call for proposals where you can put in information about where are other parts of your project being funded from, if that is relevant. So if the university is providing some supplies or facilities or things like that, there's a place in the proposal now, I was trying to find the specific question, where you can describe that outside of the budget. And so that helps reviewers understand, like, acknowledging that $15,000 may not fund the full cost of all projects. It gives a place where you can describe to reviewers where other materials and resources that are necessary for the project are coming from besides the budget request. And then to the really specific question also in the chat of tuition, traditionally tuition is only fundable if it is associated with an assistantship. And so if your tuition requests are associated with an assistantship, you're good to go. Tuition that's not associated with an assistantship needs a little bit more specificity because federal grants typically cannot fund like general expenses. They have to be specific to the project. So if you're asking for tuition costs outside of an assistantship arrangement, you just need to make really clear in your justification how that tuition, how those classes are specific to the project. Did that answer both the question that was voiced and the can we request tuition in the budget section question in the chat?
Yes, it mostly did. I just have a little bit of a clarification. So how it works for me, I'm a PhD student, is that I have funding up from the department to, let's say fall of next semester, and then I would need spring to just finish on, and I'm not really taking classes, but I'm just on like where I just am like I just have like one PhD class that I have to like where I'm just registered with the university. I'm not really taking a class, but I just need the funding to be a part of the university and to fund the final semester of my research. I don't know where that falls in between like TA-ship or tuition costs. It's kind of in the middle.
As long as the funding is so you can finish the research for the project that you're requesting funding for, then it's an allowable cost.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
No problem.
And
to the other,
I was just gonna say a more broad kind of follow-up though for that though, Heather, like a lot of our grants are the labor expense is usually a significant chunk of what a grant costs. So don't like in terms of the relative cost of materials versus the labor expense on your budget, we know that this is going to take a lot of your time and that you need to be people need to be compensated for it. So yeah, it's just wanted to make it clear that we see a lot of labor expenses as part of these grants. Sorry.
That helps a lot too. Thank you.
yeah, and I think that addresses the question in the chat about the specific $2,000. We do not give reviewers specific guidance around like, there's no Northeast SARE guidance around like, oh, salary or tuition should be X percentage of the budget. No, the reviewers are going to look at the budget in relationship to the project. And as long as you've justified that the expenses are necessary to the project, That's the overarching consideration that reviewers are looking for. To the question in the chat about the start and end date, 1.5 years. So the budgets for Northeast SARE, they're usually set up based on like year 1, year 2. And so it would essentially, you're going to be filling out the year 2 tab of the budget or the column of the budget anyways. And it's really, we encourage you to like just think deeply about project end dates. We often have to do a lot of amendments because people's projects take longer than they were expecting. So it's always okay to finish early. The short answer to this question is yes, your project can take 1.5 years. That being said, we encourage you to consider like, I mean, I get how it's based around academic years and things like that, but we just encourage you to think really carefully about your project end date and to give yourself a little extra wiggle room. You can always finish early, but the short answer is yes. Okay, there's lots of beautiful questions coming in the chat. Also, I want folks to know if you want to bring your voice into the space, please feel free to raise your hand. I'll keep moving through the chat questions unless I see a hand raised.
I have a quick procedural note. I just want to let people know that poll that we just put out there has a question about farmer partners. And I want to, that is part of our partnership grant, requires a farmer partner, so that it's not a requirement for this program, but it is in that poll because it is a good thing to know whether or not you're planning on working with a farmer. So I left it in the poll. So that's on me.
Thanks for that clarification, Vander. Okay, there's a question in the chat. Is there a limit on how much of the grant can be used for travel to conferences to present the research? Again, no, we don't provide any guidance either to applicants or reviewers by intention about what proportion of funds should go to what category. It's all about justifying your expenses, explaining why you're asking for them, why they are important, and why they're necessary for your project's success. And as long as reviewers can see the connection between the project success and the expenses that you're requesting, then that is one of the key components of a strong budget. The next question is, can we apply to the grant with a project that has already started? Samples have been collected, but downstream analysis needs to be completed. The answer is yes. It would be one of those things that you would probably want to make clear in the like other sources of funding question in the proposal, is just like some of the work of the project has already been begun and essentially like funded by the university. It's just a good time to note that you can never have different sources of federal funding the same project. So if you've already got funding for this project, especially if it's from a federal source, then we wouldn't be a good fit to also fund this project. That being said, many graduate students are working on a large project that might be led by their faculty advisor, and they're doing a specific part of it. So as long as you're clear in proposal that like you are doing this piece of a larger project and that piece isn't otherwise funded, then that's fine. That's totally eligible. So I think you just need to make clear in your timeline that some of the work has been done, but there's still all of this work that needs funding, and that is yet to be done. And I'm going to pause a little bit after each question, just in case those folks have a follow-up clarifying question.
No, that's perfect. Thank you.
Great, thanks. Okay. What details are needed about the farmer we will be associating with? Are there additional documents needed from them apart from the contacts? So this is what Vander was clarifying. This grant program technically does not require a farmer partner or farmer team members. That is fundable, and we love, I mean, SARE is all about farmer engagement. However, we understand that graduate student projects are often, something embedded in research that's already happening, or they can be entirely lab-based. So Northeast SARE is very pro farmer engagement. It's something that really is a extra strong project in our eyes, but it's not required for this program. And then in terms of if you do have farmer partners, which is awesome, I'm just scrolling through the call for proposals because I want to make sure that I speak accurately. So if they're at the level of key individual, that's the place where you would be describing them and including a letter of commitment. Most farmer partners and graduate student projects aren't at that like level of the project team. And so you're more going to be describing them in the agricultural community question. And that does not have a letters of commitment requirement. So really, it's just making sure that if you're working with farmers, you understand the community, that they're engaged in design of the project, if you're working with them directly, and that that has been informed by real community needs. Are there other questions that folks have? Okay, for the budget in terms of wages, would I, a graduate student, be under the project leaders or student wages? From Northeast SARE's perspective, the graduate student is the project leader. So you would be under the project leader section. Now, if there were other undergraduate students that might be supporting the project in different ways, those would be in the student wages section. But again, even though functionally, most likely your colleges or universities are going to require you to have a faculty advisor actually be the project leader on the contract, from SARE's perspective, you, the graduate student, are the project leader, and most of our communications will be directed to you. You're welcome.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
So with my PI that I'm working with, he works with another organization somewhere in the grant. Should I put that in that I'm working with this other organization that is funded by government funds?
I think the question, I'm trying to just wrap my head around the question. So the faculty advisor that you'll be working with also works with another organization that receives federal funding, and you're wondering if that needs to be disclosed. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am, because the materials I'm using are from their plantation somewhere in California, so I'll be using their trees that I'm using for my research.
I would say, so again, this is, I think from what I'm understanding is this is one of those situations where there's like a broader facility and a research facility happening, and that it's okay that they're getting government funding as long as your project is not, so for example, you just wouldn't include the cost of those trees if they've already been paid for by other federal funds. You're going to be putting costs in your budget that is not being funded from other sources.
Okay, all right, thank you.
You're welcome. Does the farmer I work with have to be an independent individual, or can they be someone working at a college farm? Absolutely. Yep. Farmers, Northeast SARE's definition of a farm includes nonprofit farms, college farms, university farms. We can put our definition of a farm in the chat because that might be helpful for folks, but we do fund even farmer grants, for example, to farms that are based at larger organizations. And again, just a reminder that you're not required to have a farmer partner for this program. Other programs, yes, but not the graduate student grant program. Yeah. Thank you, Vander, for putting the definition of a farm into the chat. Are there other, sometimes folks share what they're thinking about applying for. We know that the budget can be really overwhelming when you first look at it. We are in the process soon. There'll be a video on our website that will help walk folks through filling that, just providing some guidance and making it, demystifying it a little bit. Our budget template that attempts to have both the costs and the justification in the same place so that you're not being asked to sort of fill out two separate documents. And we provide a ton of information and guidance, both in the call for proposals and in the template itself. But it can be very simple and straightforward for such a small amount of money, as long as it's clearly connected to the proposal itself. Vander, do you have a video that shows folks how to?
I was just about to say, we had a lot of folks who have already found their faculty advisor, but we have a video that we produced that explores how to use the projects database to search for one, and it's a really useful tool for searching the projects database generally. So I am going to share that.
Okay, so I want to make sure that we have a moment to Okay, so I want to make sure that we have a moment to show you the SARE funded project database. And so this website here is projects.sare.org/search-projects/. So we'll have that link that you'll be able to access that very easily. But when you're on this page here, it was recently updated. So if you've been on our website before, it might look a little bit different, but the updates are really helpful. So now when you search these keywords, the results are going to order in projects of relevancy. So if the keywords are in the title of a project, it appears higher in the listing. If the keywords are used multiple times, it's higher in the listing. If you don't give any keywords and you're searching more by these regions, state, project type, commodities, practices, those categories, then those filters are applied and the results are sorted that way by year descending and project number ascending. So just to give you an example, if we were to search agroforestry here, we have 688 results. So probably not going to review all of those, but you are applying for a program in the Northeast. So let's select Northeast here and click search. And okay, we've got it down to 144. So you can see here, any project code that says GNE is a graduate student grant. So this particular one was a graduate student project that was funded and has, agroforestry elements within it. And you can kind of just scroll through and see the different grants that are available or that have been funded. These are all grants that have already been funded. Some of them are maybe still, additional updates might be coming on some of their reports, but you can click through and review even their reports, which is really cool. And then the other search element that is really helpful from this page is you can search by project coordinators. So this is helpful if you're trying to get a sense for if your faculty advisor has been on a project before. And so here you might click and search for John Taylor. And okay, John Taylor's in our database. We're clicking here. And he has been on this project of the GNE 22283, which this one happens to have agroforestry in it. If he was working on other projects, those would also be listed here. But now we know that Dr. Taylor has been on projects and has worked within the Northeast SARE grant programs before. And if you know, a person is not listed, if their projects aren't GNE, that's okay. It's okay if it's not, they haven't been on a graduate student project specifically. And it's also okay if you don't find who you're hoping to work with. Like I said, it's very easy to onboard new faculty to support you in that grant process. So definitely keep that in mind as part of the search capabilities of the website and how this can be a helpful place to dig in.
Another wonderful video. Thank you remotely, Caitlin, away. But yeah, we're gonna open back up here for more questions. If people have some either, following up on that or just general questions about your project or anything.
Yes, I
And
have a
if there's-
question again.
Please.
So with what she said in the video, you have to enhance stability of agriculture and farmers. Does the grant or does the work have to directly affect farmers that grow specific crops, or can it affect how, like, so I'm going to be doing bioenergy. Is that a way I can? I guess my question is, can I use bioenergy as a way to write about this grant? It's about sustainability of fuels for jet planes. I was wondering if that's another way I can, if that's a way I can write about this grant.
So, I think part of this is just my lack of awareness and knowledge about your particular topic that you're naming. But it does, the one thing that I'll lift up that's in the calls for proposals is it just says proposals should address issues of current or potential importance to Northeast farmers, agricultural researchers, and farm support professionals, basically anybody doing things with agriculture. And so as long as you can make that connection, which again may not be abundantly clear to me just because I don't know anything about what you're talking about, but that's really the bright line, is it has to be an issue of current or potential importance to sustainable agriculture in the Northeast. And if you want to say more about that, if you feel comfortable, I welcome that. And maybe we can get into some of the nuance, or maybe that answered your question.
That's my question, actually. Thank you.
Great.
I want to call out that from the hoping to learn today answer part of the poll, we had people who were asking to be looking to be more familiar with Northeast SARE grants, thinking about applying next year and just wanted to learn more about the program, looking to just learn something new, learning about the call for proposal and budget, how to format writing a grant and how this might differ from other grants, grant info, and then eligibility info. So those were the things that were called out specifically in there. I am going to be opening up a poll here for people to let us know what you learned today. It's super helpful for us to just kind of continue to improve these sessions. But yeah, so anyone, Heather, if you wanted to touch a little, I think maybe on, call proposal budget or formatting, and if anyone wants to shout out, feel free to.
Yeah, thanks for that, Vander. It's already been put in the chat once, but I'm just going to put the call for proposals in the chat again. We really try to lay it out for folks exactly what we're looking for by both. So if you go to page, page 6 of the call for proposals, it basically starts laying out the pieces that you're going to have to write. And not only do we put the questions and the guidance for what we want, what we're looking for you to write there, but we also put the review criteria. And the review criteria is exactly what reviewers are going to be looking at while they look at your answers. So we really try, potentially to the less ideal outcome of providing too much information, but we really try to be very, very, very clear. And so when you're writing your proposal, just keep the call for proposals close at hand. And there's a checklist in the call for proposals that will help you kind of keep yourself on track. And like earlier, Emma put a link in the chat for the Word document. We've also created a Word document that you can work in offline to start drafting your proposal, which we will then eventually have to copy and paste all into the online system, because we don't take just like upload a Word document. You've got to submit through the online form. But the biggest tip that I can give folks is just like really pay attention to and like study and just like feel grounded in the call for proposals. And if anything in there is confusing, the part of the reason we recorded Caitlin for today, even though she couldn't be here, is so that you would like feel comfortable. Like there's a person on the other end of this email address and she's awesome. And like, they really want to help you. And so if you have any questions or confusions as you get into it, there's, I think, 2 more of these Q&A sessions over the next 2 weeks, and you can just email and or call Caitlin. But we do get lots of questions about the budget, not just in this section, but always. And so like a few tips about filling out the budget. Really be careful to keep the formulas that we have put in the template for you. Try to keep them intact. And be careful if you're adding any additional rows, just to make sure that those formulas are there. And that helps you make sure that it really is there to support you to be as clear as possible, so that reviewers can see, okay, like there's this many units of a thing, and then it's time multiplied by this cost per unit, and that's where this number is coming from. And then anything that goes in the other budget line, which is another place that we get a lot of questions about, it shouldn't fit anywhere else. That's the only reason that we have that other line. That probably makes sense. But even if you put something in that other section, each item has to be clearly identified and justified in order to be allowed. So any like miscellaneous or contingency expenses are not allowable. And it's not specific to SARE, that's any USDA grant program. And then just a reminder, SARE doesn't require match. And so there's just no need to think about match. As we talked about earlier, if you feel like a reviewer is not going to understand how your project can be successful if $15,000 doesn't cover your full costs, there's a new question right in the budget section. It's optional, so you don't have to use it if it's not relevant to your project, but it's called other funding sources. And it's just a place where you can describe like, these things aren't in my budget because of this reason. They are available. They're like, we have access to them. So those are some of my budget tips. I'll pause. Oh, great. Yeah, someone had asked for the template and Vander dropped that in the chat. Thank you both. I'll pause for a little bit and see if there's any questions. And if not, I can keep going with other common questions that we get.
Sorry, I do have another question. I couldn't raise my hand. I can't find the emoji for it. Sorry. It's about the difference between unit and quantity. So when I'm putting in hours, say should I put like the number of hours total, or is it like 1 week would be 1 unit, or like a week is a unit and then the quantity would be the number of hours in that week and then per unit time?
It depends on how your university does it. It could be sometimes they're in months, sometimes the unit is like academic period. Sometimes like the most common way that we see salary is like % of full-time. And so the unit, I'm trying to put myself in the budget right now. The unit is a cost is your full-time salary. And then the unit is just the % that's getting dedicated to the project. But really, like different universities budget these things in different ways. And as long as it's clear, once again, it all comes down to like, is a reviewer who is a farmer going to be able to understand? Which most reviewers for the graduate student program are researchers, so they'll have a little bit more experience with that diversity. But you just want to make sure that it's clear to whoever the person may be that's reviewing your budget. I know that wasn't super specific of an answer. It's because we do try to allow some flexibility, and I hope that's helpful.
No, that helps, and I can reach out to the grant coordinator at the department just to get clarification on what they want. Thank you.
You're welcome. So sometimes we get questions from folks like, okay, obviously my biggest focus right now is on the application process, but also like, what if I get funded? What then? And so we already talked about that the decisions will be made in July and announced to applicants as soon as possible, either late July or early August at the latest. And then there is a process of Caitlin will work with folks who are awarded to finalize the scope of the project, specifically double checking those project end dates. Like, have you given yourself enough time? Do you want to add in a little bit of wiggle room? And the budget. So it's actually pretty common that there are strong applications where the budget is pretty clear, but there are some edits that need to be made. And we have the flexibility once a project is awarded to work with you on that. So no funds can be added to a project at that point, but we can work with you to adjust minor errors. And so if a project is awarded, that's something that Caitlin would be working with those folks on. Caitlin will likely meet with each new awardee just to help coach them a little bit about SARE's processes and what to expect. And then the contracting process is going to be between our host organization, which is the University of Vermont, and your host organization, which is going to be the university or the college or the graduate program that you are a part of. And so most of that you won't have to participate in. That'll be between grant offices or research offices. And then, as I mentioned before, all contracts will have a start date of August 1st. That's to keep things smooth and simple on our end. However, your project does not have to start August 1st. That's just the soonest that your organization can start billing us for expenses related to the project. You can have a project start date that is later than August 1st. And so you should put in, when you're applying, whatever project start date is relevant to your project. Yeah, please. I see the hand.
Awesome. I found the emoji. So realistically, I want to like also apply for the NIFA grant when that comes out. And I know USDA funds that as well, but you can't have the same project funded twice. I want to obviously apply for both. What happens if I get funded for both?
You'll have to make a choice.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. But it's not like it doesn't. I'm allowed to apply for both though, right? And
Oh, yeah.
even though the decision comes up, because calls aren't open for that proposal, I think until May or something. But I could apply, it's not gonna be an issue or anything like that.
Yep, you can apply. And then if you started the project with us and then found out after that you got funding for the same work from NIFA, you would have to end the project with us. But
Okay.
if it's possible, and this is what, this is pretty common as long as folks are, there's a lot of very honest, and then I'm going to ask for funding for this part of the project over here. Now, obviously, if you can't do that, if you need to ask for funding for the same thing from both, then you have to do that. But it is a way that you could potentially, if your university has some resources that they can support this with, it's a way you could potentially receive both, as long as the project activities were unique from piece to piece, but they might be part of the same overall research initiative.
Okay, that helps a lot too. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions that are coming up for folks? If not, I can speak a little bit about the flexibility after a project is funded, but I really want to make space for people who are like, should I ask this? Yes, please ask it. Okay, I'll speak a little bit. So once your project is funded, we at Northeast SARE, we recognize that or once a project is funded, I should say, we recognize that things happen. Things come up, things go differently than you planned. Could be for great reasons because you get into the project and you realize like, oh, we thought this was what we really needed to do, but to achieve this research question, it's actually this. Or it might be, you know, when I first started at Northeast SARE, the COVID pandemic was brand new. And so that disrupted a lot of projects. And so if you get into a project with Northeast SARE, just know that there is flexibility. Both if you need to make a significant change to your budget, you would work with Caitlin, you would request to Caitlin first before you make new expenses to make a budget change. And as long as it's in line with the project objectives, Caitlin is very likely to approve that. We get it on record with our financial team who approves invoices, and you can make a budget shift. If something unexpected comes up in the project deliverables and you just need to let Caitlin know that the reporting is going to look different, again, as long as it's still clear that the project does not become totally different from what reviewers reviewed and approved, there is some flexibility to take different approaches if you get into the project and you find that that's really what's most of service to the objectives and to the question that you've set out to address. And finally, sometimes for whatever reason, and this is a little less common with graduate student grants just because they're based around academic periods, but if you find out that the project is going to take longer than you expected and you have the flexibility to give it more time, then we can also amend the contract and extend your project end date and actually add time to your project within reason. And as long as it's of service to the project objectives. So we understand that a proposal is your best effort to describe what you imagine doing at this time, and you're not locked in stone to that exact approach if things go very differently than you planned.
We are coming up on time here, and so we will sit here for the next 2 minutes smiling and quiet, unless in case anybody has anything. But if not, it's been so wonderful to have all your questions today. We hope you learned a lot, and there will be more Q&A sessions like this before the proposals are due. It's next Tuesday and then the Wednesday after that. And we would be happy to take any other questions you have there. Of course, you can always reach out to Caitlin.